Well, hello, book club members. We are delighted to bring you a little bonus today because we have a dear friend, Martha Wright, who is joining us to talk a little bit more in depth about the book, The Sober Lush. And Martha and I first met almost 4 years ago in the training to become This Naked Mind coaches. And what was so fascinating to me, I don't know if you remember this specifically, Martha, but she told me that at the time that she was certifying to be a coach, an alcohol-free coach, that her and her husband had an import wine business and a winery. And I remember, I think my jaw dropped a little bit and I said, well, how are you going to do this thing? And it has just been so much fun to watch Martha, as she describes it herself, sort of have one foot in the wine industry and definitely all of herself in this alcohol-free lifestyle. So Martha, we are delighted you are here. Your background is so incredible with previously worked with Food Network chefs, and you're currently in Paris. And so you have this life that is very luscious. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you both, Sarah and Terry. This is a thrill, and this book lights me up. When I first became aware of the book title, when it was published, I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. And it was something that I don't know if anyone in the group can relate to this, but as you know, the cover artwork is just stunning. I just wanted to put it on my bedside table and look at it. I remember feeling so excited. I took it on a plane trip and I had this sensation, almost like I'm kind of breathy right now. I felt so excited that I could barely stand to crack it open. That doesn't happen to me typically with a book. And so I am especially happy to be with you to talk about this book.
Yes, and you shared that you had a previous conversation where you invited some women, and I was there to come together and talk about this book because it had been so exciting for you, and you really wanted to share and help people kind of understand the impact of exploring how we are excited and delighted in this alcohol-free life. So that was, gosh, probably a couple of years ago. What has changed in your sober, lush life? Like, how do you see it any different now?
Well, I think initially the excitement about the book title was really because this just embodied and spoke to everything that I was wanting to find in my alcohol-free journey. Really hoping this was possible. And where I come from in my background, I was born and raised in New Orleans. The city motto is "Laissez les bons temps rouler," let the good times roll. And I was always in promotion and marketing, and then moved into, with my husband, the wine business, and we founded a winery. So a lot of outward facing and hospitality and the art of the table. It was before the winery that I worked for Food Network chefs and spent years with the chefs, just involved in their recipe testing and traveling to other locations and back and forth to New York to record the programs. And I was just very involved in this kind of sensory pleasure kind of lifestyle. And again, I think that Southern hospitality and New Orleans hospitality, and along the way, like maybe for many of us, it all got wrapped up in alcohol. So that while it doesn't need to be, that's very much the way our culture is and the way we've been conditioned and socialized. So that my fear was, am I going to have to give all this up? All the things that I love, the people, the connections, the events, the textures and sensory sensations. And my instinct was, what if I could double down on it? What if it's not about giving it up? What if it's not about, that's kind of the message I would love to share. What if it's not even just about reclaiming it, but even more doubling down on this kind of pleasure that we take from life. And so the book held that promise. Is it possible? And then it's a gift because the authors are such beautiful writers, in my opinion. And they paint a picture. They paint a picture and a vision. And so what I can say, Terry, I appreciate the question so much. What I have seen is in those years since the book came out, it has only answered for me the question that, yes, it's possible. It has happened for me and for people that I am coaching, that it does end up feeling that life is now more. It is more. It is a big theme for me this month, really. It's just come up, and it's always interesting when that happens, is what are we, when we say no to a drink, what are we saying yes to? And that realization that when we say no to something, we are saying yes to something else. And the converse is true. And so that is what this has been, is that whole process that we talk about in various ways, but realizing that our brain is wrong about an awful lot. And so our predictions, our brain is a prediction making machine, but our brain evolved to make many predictions to keep us safe. It did not evolve to make accurate predictions all the time. So our brain's predicting a lot of things that are wrong. And one of those typical kinds of predictions is life will be dull. Life will be, and I know the words in my head when I was considering, I'm sober curious, but I'm scared. And how do I do this in the wine business? How do I even contemplate that? And the words in my head were, life will have no sparkle. Mm-hmm. And I was big, just a champagne host and really an educator. That's what I felt like I was bringing groups of women together around learning about this particular vintage or village, and that was a real fear. And so it has been incredibly gratifying, and to the point that I wouldn't wish it had happened any other way. I feel like I get an appreciation of life and what living, juicy and fully alive means, in a way that I just couldn't have without going through the middle. So I think that is what I would say, is that's what those couple years have been, of really putting this into practice. And that's what I love doing, both in Portland and here in Paris. And we split our time. Our daughter lives in Paris. So this is both places, and I'd argue anywhere you live is just a great place to make a head first dive into living with all of our senses just, fully alive and awake. And so that is what I have really been doing. And that's why the book to me is like a manifesto.
Yeah, so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm curious. One of the things that Sarah and I were curious about, and we were really excited to ask book club members, is who do you identify with more? Jardine, who, she has a certain vibe and personality, or Amanda?
Okay. I think that I am possibly more like Amanda, with aspiration to be a little more like to be that, like, more of the night owl and the dancing all night kind of. Is that fair to say? Is that
yeah, I think so too. I feel a little like I wish I was a little more edgy, maybe. And she sort of opens up some of that possibility. And Sarah, you have a different opinion.
Well, I feel like I can't really relate to either of them to a certain extent. I feel like Amanda's more domestic than I am, and Jardine's more bohemian than I am. And so I can see the appeal to both sides, but I also, I mean, I had my wild days for sure, and I think I probably, if I had to choose, lean a little bit more towards Jardine.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's really powerful to have this style of book. Sarah and I were talking about this. I don't know that I've read a book where there's little snippets of real life from two people, where you get two different perspectives kind of around the same topic. And again, you as a writer, Martha, mentioning that it's beautifully written. I really appreciated that as well. And my first round with the book was in listening to it on Audible, which was fun as well.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, this idea that it really is almost like an invitation to, fully just drink up. Life is large, and let's drink it up. And I think back to Jardine and Amanda, Jardine, I think that idea of the illicit, or the mischievous and the night owl, that's something that I have enjoyed leaning into, and I have found that it's counterintuitive. I feel more enabled, more empowered to do that alcohol free. So I have joined up here in Paris, gone out on a speakeasy tour of Paris, meeting in a public square late at night with a bunch of strangers, and going from speakeasy to speakeasy. And that really captures that kind of feeling of hidden, mischievous. We're doing something illicit, we're sneaking in passageways, all that kind of, some of those feelings. And realizing that I just feel more capable of doing that now. I've talked about this before, but I do feel, and I wonder if anyone can relate, that a feeling of freedom that I feel lighter. I feel less encumbered. So while we might worry and have that fear, I don't know that I'll be able to party or go out or stay out as late. What is interesting is we can find ourselves realizing, actually, I'm not gonna get that sleepy feeling and pass out. I actually have energy. I feel like I really can keep going and stay out if I want to. I don't tend to do it a lot, but can. And I also feel less afraid of an early morning or a really early wake up time for a flight or something like that, because so just that feeling of feeling lighter and maybe more able to do things. The interesting thing about that speakeasy tour was it was great evidence for my brain that each of us was from, we were from all over the world, and we were all just equally and actively participating. And it was such clear evidence. There's no way someone could say, oh, this person is definitely getting more out of this or having more fun. It was such an equal participation. And it just meant I spent a little bit less money. Everywhere we went had a great alternative for me, so that was not a worry. And I remember where we went. I know exactly where we were, and I could get back to those places, and was able to get up and, go run and have another adventure. So, it again, it gets back to what our brain gets wrong when it's going to make predictions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so inspiring, and especially to do a tour that seems like it would be alcohol focused. And I mean, one of the things I think a lot of people really shy away from that, whether it's like a wine tasting experience or that sort of a tour where it feels like that's going to be the focus. And it's so inspiring to hear that it doesn't have to be, and that, you can go and you can fully participate without numbing yourself and feeling like crap, right?
Right. I did another one recently that instead of speakeasies, we just went to a couple of bars. And again, these were certainly not crazy or meat market kind of bars. They were nice places, and they also really offered nice alternatives. But the one that I did recently was specifically aimed at solo travelers. And so you're absolutely right, Sarah. Our common point of interest, I thought that was so interesting. Our common point of interest was travel. And we had a different sort of entry because we were all solo. No one was coming, with someone else, and having that in common, the travel was really inspirational. So again, yes, it was centered around a love of travel and learning about each other. So I absolutely agree. I did another really fun class here, and there's a point to this, so I'll kind of get to that. These ideas of going to try something new and getting out of comfort zone, to me, that is a really wonderful way of engaging our senses and having a very lush experience and feeling alive. So novelty and variety are great things to look for when we think of how do we construct a lush life. So another one I went to was a dance class taught by a Moulin Rouge dancer.
Wow.
And just thought it was just too funny to have, she actually was with Moulin Rouge and is presently with the New York Rockettes.
Wow.
And we met in a swanky Paris bar during the day when the bar was, quiet. And we were taught we did a bar class first, some exercises, and then we were taught choreography, and then we kind of performed it. And then and then we had social time, and it finished with a cocktail. And again, because the focus was about the dance, and truly what it was about was empowering ourselves by doing something that we don't think somehow that we have any business doing. So I went into it with all the thoughts of like, what am I doing here? And I'm older than anybody in this room by, at least 25 years. But getting through all that and saying, my brain's wrong. I can do this. I don't have to do it perfectly either. And it's about pushing outside of my comfort zone, and it's a lark. I want to encourage people to, when they think about what might I go do, to start exploring a lush life, is to realize you do not have to become an expert and do a deep dive. Terry and I have talked about this before. I learned and I explored it and gave myself permission. It's okay, and I personally think it's just great to be a bit of a dabbler. Go and do something for once, just to see. And I think sometimes there's a societal message that we need to be all in or super serious, or and I think it's just fun to realize we can just go try something. I went and did an archery class. I just took one lesson, and of all things, how fun that the instructor is a spiritual advisor and coach to people who are leaving the evangelical church. I mean, it's just, you can't make this stuff up. It's just, it's so fun. It's just so fun. So, those are some of the ways that I tap in to exploring a lush life. Novelty plays a role, and then things that really allow us to explore our senses. Really looking into our senses. So
yeah, well, I love that. I feel like for so many years we were dulling our senses to a certain extent, and so it's almost like when something's been dulled and it comes back, it's just so much more intense, and there's just this excitement to go out and really experience it.
I love that, Sarah. I totally agree that, and I think about that a lot of. It's one of the ways we can reframe what we're doing. That idea that we get to do it with all our senses intact. And so that speakeasy tour, you really can have a sense of that it was not just that we're all having the same experience. At this point, I would argue that I had an elevated experience because I got to do it with my senses fully intact. The very first time I was out at a friend's winery, having just, started on that alcohol-free journey, I had some thoughts about it, and prepped myself and just thought this is a really good opportunity. And when I got there, I was very aware of how I was noticing everything. I was noticing the brilliant, bright orange poppy, Oregon poppy that's growing everywhere, and really taking in the view and enjoying a conversation with another guest who had just learned salami making in Italy, and being really interested and able to just listen and ask questions. And I felt aware of, wow, it feels very freeing that I don't have this distraction of a glass that needs to be refilled. And so I did have that experience of feeling, I feel like I have the front row seats here. And that's something I think about a lot. I had a similar experience or another occasion, and that's why I just encourage everyone to just notice. That's all we need to do. It does the work for us if we just notice. And being on a beach with my daughter, and this was the first time I'd ever been to kind of a beach club where they, server comes around, and I had an alcohol-free pina colada. She had one with rum. And to me, again, the evidence was just so clear that you could say we had the same experience. So why choose this? But I really would say I had the, more elevated experience with my senses intact. So the beautiful view, the cute waiter who came, to deliver our drinks. It felt like, how could this be improved upon? It's just beautiful as it is. And I don't want to take away by numbing this out. So I love what you said about the numbing with alcohol, numbing our senses. And it's ironic, isn't it, that we have just associated alcohol with heightened experiences, but the science doesn't bear that out at all. And I think we have an inner knowing that, yeah, it's true. It doesn't, does it? It's not, it's bringing it down, dialing things down.
Just have to experience it, allow ourselves to go through those first couple uncomfortable experiences and see, for ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad you said that too, because I, no question, fully admit, I get excited, and I'm excited by the conversation. I'm excited about the stimulation to just be talking to you. And I certainly wouldn't want anyone to feel like, okay, this is, off, over the top. It's not always so easy. No, it's not. And let's acknowledge that. And it's not mainly because our brain is making some predictions, that this is going to be hard or not fun or whatever. And sometimes we just got to punch through the resistance and go try it, and have the attitude that, what, it is okay. Even if it's only just okay, that's a major win. In this journey, that is a win, because your brain is getting to see, what? Wasn't the best night of my entire life, but it wasn't what my brain predicted. So that's going to be a win. So even just trying.
Yeah. And I want to just ask you, Martha, because you live in Paris, and it feels like, oh, of course, because she's in Paris, she has all these opportunities to try unique things. But I feel for you, this is an attitude that you bring wherever you go. And I want our readers of the book and members of the club to understand that this is available to all of us. It's sometimes a barrier that we, again, our brain tells us, well, I could never do that. But these, experiences in the book prove otherwise. Thinking is, Martha, I think sometimes people can get caught up and say, well, that's easy for her. So tell us about the role that attitude plays in having a sober, lush life.
I love that you said that, because and you're absolutely right. It could sound like, okay, they're just a lot of events and things to tap into, in that city. And I have done things through, I've used Airbnb experiences to go try different things. And, you know, back in Oregon, I signed up to go learn how to milk a cow on and farm. And I'll give an example of just why this sort of ticks a bunch of boxes. It's the novelty. It got me up very early and driving to a place. This is my, you know, state where I've lived for 22 years, but I've never been up at that hour, probably never visited that town, you know, to do something like that. And I have no experience on a farm and have never milked a cow. And so not only are there tons of things like that available, and here and in Portland and in New Orleans, I've used Meetup as a platform, and there's, you know, interest groups of any kind, but much more to your point, Terry, I'm in full agreement. And this isn't about always going out. I mean, I like to do that, but I'm not doing that every day. This might be, you know, once a month I'm doing something like that. If that, it could be, you know, less than that. And so it's not about going out and having to do something, and this definitely doesn't have to involve money at all. But things like getting up for a sunrise. It's quite extraordinary that sunrise and sunset are really miracles, aren't they? I mean, they're incredible, you know, just beautiful things to witness. Do I do it very often? No. So it's kind of, you know, that right there to me is something that is getting out of my normal routine and totally shaking up my day. And then that can create, you know, all kinds of ripple effects of what you see and who you encounter at a totally different time of day than you're normally, you know, up. And this is again what I loved about the book. It's all these simple pleasures. It's pulling out, you know, grandmother's teacup and realizing that just elevates the moment. Going outside to stargaze. Last summer, my husband and I took a few occasions to do that, and it's the same kind of thing. Wow, why don't we do this, you know, more often? We were in a place where we had a little less of, you know, the light interference. Playing one that really gets me is playing music. My husband, it comes from a music background, so he always plays music. And I really don't. If I'm alone, I don't think about music at all. And a couple days this past week, I made a point of playing a playlist of music from high school years. And I mean, it pumps you up and puts you just it takes you out of busy brain, chatty brain. And that is all our left brain, where the CEO lives. And it's a very busy, demanding, critical, driving part of our brain. And I'm guessing that everybody knows that part of the brain. Most of us reside there almost exclusively. We can get into that, but that's a very modern issue. Previous generations didn't have that luxury. You had to be out walking and chopping wood and, you know, just all of these ways that our whole body got involved, and we got into things that created flow. So we live in this, you know, busy, chatty part of the brain, and just a playlist that sweeps you out of that busy part of the brain and into a whole different headspace. And it gives this part of rest, which it needs. We all need that. And so for me, music does it. And the fun of it is it does it so quickly. So if anybody's looking for a really fast one of a way to sort of tap into some of this that we're talking about, of sensory, you know, pleasure or just exploring the senses, that is such an easy, quick one that makes a big difference, a lot of bang for the buck. But doing things that get us out of our routine are refreshing, usually, and provide a different perspective and a chance to, again, be out of just the, when we're in our routine, this part of the brain takes over because we've automated what we're doing. We're in our routine. So anything that gives us a break from that is very refreshing and allows us to be more present, because we have to be. And so that could be as simple as, hey, family, or, me, myself, I'm going to eat dinner in the backyard, or I'm going to carry my dinner to the front porch or to the park. Summer, it's late, and just the sound of, kids playing and whatever is happening in the park. Any of that just changes up routine, because it's not your normal routine. You actually are forced to be present with the sensory experiences. It's one of the reasons I enjoy solo adventures and going somewhere new. If it's not automated for me and I don't know where I'm going, I have to be in the present moment. This isn't like driving somewhere I've driven 1,000 times before. I have to pay attention. So I have to notice, I have to look, I have to hear. So it could be things like that. It could be things like, I never wore perfume, because in the wine business, this is the kind of snobby side of wine. You don't wear perfume. And so lately I've just been like, shh,
Yep.
Just pour it on, make up for all those lost years. Dressing up. Now, I'm not saying don't anyone get scared, not saying, costume parties, that strikes fear in the heart of many people, the pressure of that or something. But if you look up and kind of research, what are these things that elevate experience, engage the senses, you will find dressing up in some kind of costume. That's why humans do it. It works. But even something, I went to an event and I got the idea kind of stimulated. The idea was stimulated by something my sister-in-law said. This may sound extra, but I had a floral wrist corsage made. And I've never done anything like that in my life. I've never, bought myself flowers. Buying yourself flowers is a good one, by the way. But I had this thing made, and it was super interesting how it shifted how I felt at the event. And it gave me a conversation point with other people. In the end, I ended up feeling like, wow, that was an inexpensive, big bang for the buck way of having a more sensory experience at an event. It was kind of a botanical floral event anyway, so it kind of fit in.
I love these ideas, Martha, around simple things that we can bring in. And I think of a like lighting a candle. That's something I don't do a lot. My husband loves that, and particularly in the winter. But, some people have a routine where lighting a candle helps, again, bring in that sensory experience and helps us get out of our brain. And I think the book does such a good job of, some things are big, like some big experiences, but it also really focuses on exactly what you're saying, is these small little get back in touch with our senses moments that elevate things. And like you said, as simple as buying yourself flowers, or I love going to a party with a floral wrist corsage. Like, what a delightful sensory experience to just treat yourself. And I think part of this book is the treating ourselves. Like, this work of becoming alcohol-free and living alcohol-free often feels very heavy. And so Sarah and I really wanted to start the club with the Sober Lush, because it feels like this is an opportunity for us to flip the script. Exactly what you're saying, Martha.
Yes, absolutely. It does feel heavy sometimes. And I am just a big believer, and that's why I'm so happy for everyone in your book club. What a brilliant book to start with. I think it makes all the difference, because if we approach the alcohol-free journey as taking something away, that of course that feels like deprivation. But what if it is about all the additions, and kind of like we started the conversation, if it's really not about, oh no, thank you, it's really about, yes, I'm saying yes to all of this. And, you know, again, that wrist corsage example, I, you know, kind of backpedaled and apologized, like, oh, okay, if that sounds extra. But I think it's interesting that, you know, if that cost me $35, how funny that we might say, oh gosh, that is, you know, so out there, but never worried about what we were paying in alcohol. I mean, just think of what I would have paid that night alone, if not that week, that month on alcohol. So I love that idea of treating ourselves, and very much though making clear that this, you know, most often in the everyday moments, it has nothing to do with an expenditure or an excursion even. But these things, I love that, of lighting the candle. And a big one for me is food. And because of all that background with food, it's one area where I really did always take care of myself. Maybe not in other realms, but when it came to food, I felt like it is worth it to take a few extra steps to zest a lemon to put into this tuna fish, to cut up very fresh herbs, to whatever it is, to use really good olive oil. And that to me is a way of experiencing pleasure that is just worth it. And I think really has a lot to do with this whole journey about what are we, you know, adding in, and how are we making this about yes, and feeling more embodied, and, you know, ultimately more alive.
Yes, I love that so much. And that really is the message of, you know, living this beautiful life after alcohol. I think this is a place that we come to and we're not sure exactly what's on the other side. So Martha, thank you so much for being our guest today. It was delightful and wonderful to have you sharing these experiences. I think you've given us new ideas, new incentive perhaps. And one of the things that I appreciate so much about you, Martha, as my friend, is you always so eloquently remind me of this delightful experience called life. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you so
inviting me. Sarah and Terry, thank you for inviting me into this conversation and into your group. And I'm just wishing everyone a really wonderful experience reading the book and talking about it together. It's beautiful.